Hello there, I'm Jeff. This is the Idea Lab, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build your bladeless fan kit. So let's first take a look at the tools we're going to need and the parts that are included in your kit. So to build this, you're going to need a few things. First, you'll need a screwdriver. Any kind of small screwdriver should work, whether it's Phillips or flathead, as long as it's relatively small and skinny. I have a flathead screwdriver here, but yeah, Phillips would work well too. You'll also need a pair of pliers, like these little needle nose pliers. Some clippers or scissors would work too. And optionally, some wire strippers. You can get wire strippers that are sort of this kind with the little holes in, or you can get automatic wire strippers. Or if you don't have wire strippers, that's okay. You can use your scissors, or you can use a knife also, because we'll need to strip a little bit of wire. So those are the tools you need. And let's take a look at what's in the kit. The colors of the parts in your kit will probably be different from mine. We printed them in all different colors and color combinations, so we'll see which one you get. But the first part you have is the base. So the base looks like this. You have the inner section, which is this funny looking shape. And you have the outer section, which is a sort of familiar shape for anyone who's seen a bladeless fan before. So those are the three big 3D printed parts. You'll also have a little 3D printed box like this and a lid. This is for the control mechanism. You'll have a little bag that's got your speed controller in it. Should have a sealed up bag with a speed controller. You'll have your power plug, looks like this. A couple of pieces of two-sided sticky tape. You'll have a box with your fan in it. And you'll also have a little white box that has your power supply in it. I already took mine out of the box, but the little white box has your power supply. So that's everything you need to build this. It's pretty simple, but I think the payoff is really good. So I'm gonna change the camera angle here, and then we can put it all together. Okay, so first things first, we're gonna open up our box with our fan blades in it. So here's the thing that's gonna actually create the airflow for our fan. There's some other parts in here. There's some screws. There's a little grate. We don't actually need those for our project, so you can save those for something else. Open up our fan, and you can see it's got 4 wires coming out of it and going to a little plug. So for starters, we're just gonna trim off the plug. It's okay to cut these wires. Okay, so then you'll notice we've got a red and a black wire. Okay, red and black. And we also have blue and yellow. Now the blue and yellow wires we don't need, so you can either leave them and tuck them away later, or you can trim them off. And I'm gonna just go ahead and trim mine off. So you see here how there's this little notch, and the wires are sort of passing through that notch. I'm gonna kind of coax my wires through that notch to free them. There we go. This will make them easier to get a nice flush cut. So don't accidentally trim the red or the black, because we need those, but the yellow and the blue, we can trim those off. So I'm just gonna get down in there kind of close and trim those down, and these are no longer needed. I am gonna save these because I'm gonna use these to show you how to strip the wires, because that's sort of the next thing we need to do. Is we're gonna need to strip the ends of these wires to reveal a little bit of the metal conductor inside. Now, if you have wire strippers, automatic wire strippers, then this process will be very easy. You just get yourself a little bit of wire at the end. If you have the more manual type of wire strippers, you'll just choose one of the smaller gauge holes, like 18. Feed your wire in there and pull, and that will strip off a little bit in the end. Or if you don't have any wire strippers at all, I'm usually able to do this with a knife. So what I'll do is take a utility knife and just gently score around the outside of the wire like this. And then once I've made a score, it's usually pretty easy to just pop off the insulation and get yourself some exposed wire there. So whatever technique you decide to use, we're gonna need to expose a little bit of the conductors from our red wire and our black wire. Not very much, just a little bit. Really, you know, a 1/4 inch, even less, an 1/8 inch would be fine, because we don't need very much for what we're about to do. So I'm just gonna use my automatic wire strippers here, and I'm gonna take off just about 1/8 of an inch of insulation from both the red and black wires. And just to keep them from unraveling, I'm gonna just twist them together like this. That'll kind of hold them a little bit while we're working. Now later on in the project, you might decide that you want to shorten these wires, in which case you can trim them to your desired length and strip them again, but we'll get there in a minute. So that's it. We probably won't be needing these again unless we decide to shorten our wires. At least I don't think we'll be needing these again, but we're still gonna need our pliers and our screwdriver. Set those things aside. Now the fan, if you look at the side of it somewhere here, you can see it says there's a little arrow that points in the direction of airflow. So there's the side with the sticker. Air gets pulled in from the side without the sticker, and it gets blown out of the side with the sticker. So the air is moving in this direction. And it's very important that we get this right, because that needs to, you know, this needs to go into our base with the airflow being pulled in from the bottom and blown out through the top. So sticker side up is basically what we want here. So to make this work, I'm gonna tuck my wires back into those 2 notches. I'm gonna go through both notches, just like this. So now you see how I've got my wires coming out from the side with the sticker, down the side, and out that bottom notch, okay? And if I look into my base, we're gonna see there's 4 holes around the outside. Those holes don't actually get used in our case. And then there's one big hole in the corner. You can see it right down there. So that big hole is where our wires are gonna go through. So I'm gonna take my wires and just feed them through that hole. And you can see how they come out the bottom like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my fan slipped in there like that. And just sort of, while pushing my fan in, I'm gonna also be pulling on these wires. And the fan just sits in there like that. It just slides right in place. And then we've got a little notch in our base. Ultimately, that's where our wires are gonna come out of. So that's the fan loaded up in the base. Now you'll see if you look underneath, there's those fan blades. And when this whole thing gets going, those fan blades, those spin really fast, and they're made out of hard plastic. So don't reach under there while the thing is running. Otherwise, you'll really hurt the end of your finger. The top of it's not so dangerous. It's got these little protectors on the top, like a grid, so you can't accidentally touch it. The bottom's way up there, so the risk of accidentally touching it is super low. But just be aware that those are exposed fan blades there that'll be spinning real fast. The top is going to be doubly protected because there will be a big, the whole top unit will be sitting on top of this and covering it up. So for right now, just gonna set this aside and we're gonna take a look at our top unit here. You can see mine's got a little bit of like plastic flake on there. That's left over from the 3D printing process. So you can clean that off. I'm gonna clean that off of mine. Just gonna take a little utility knife and just kind of gently trim off some of those little plastic flaps. Get this looking nice and clean. There we go. I'm happy with how that looks. I'll get 2 more here. There we go. So there's the front side, and then we've got the reverse side, and you see there's a little rim running all the way around. And you've got your inner part, the insert. So this really just press fits right in there. Now, a little tip from me. I find that the fan works best if you don't press it all the way in. So when I'm pressing in, you know, it could sit completely flush here, or you can leave a little bit of a gap. So I'm actually gonna leave just a little bit of a gap. See how I push that in and it kind of just snaps right into place. And once it's in there, it's pretty well in there. I mean, you'd have to be pretty deliberate about pulling it out. So you see how I've got just a little gap there? I find I get better airflow when I have that little gap there. But even if you did push it all the way down and you had no gap, that's okay. It'll still work just fine. So there's the whole top piece put together. Looks super cool with those 2 pieces. And you can see running around the outside here, there's that little gap, and that's gonna be where the air flow is created for the top of our bladeless component. Okay, so ultimately, the way this thing is gonna work is this top part just fits right into the opening on the base and press fits into place. So no glue, no screws, it's just a press fit. And it's firm enough to hold everything in place, but loose enough that if you need to, you can pull this out and service the fan or replace parts if you need to. We still have our 2 wires coming out the back here. So at this stage, we're gonna work on the control unit, and this is what drives the fan speed. So for this, we're gonna need our little box and our lid. We're going to need our motor controller and our little pieces of sticky tape. And we're also going to need our little power connector. This is where we're gonna plug in our power supply when everything is said and done. So your power connector has got a little nut on it. So we're gonna unscrew the nut and just take that clean off. So we have our nut. Yours might also have a washer in there, a little lock washer. You don't really need that for this, so you can set the lock washer aside. All we need is the power supply with the 2 wires coming out and the nut. So you have those separated. And we've got our little package here, which we need to open up. So this is our motor controller. Inside of here, you can see we've got a little circuit board, right, with a knob on it. You can hear how the knob, when we turn it all the way counterclockwise, it clicks. And that's off in the off position when it's all the way counterclockwise and clicked. And then as we turn it clockwise, you can hear that click. That's it turning on. And then we've got from low to high. So starting off, we need to make sure that this little knob is turned all the way counterclockwise and that it is clicked so that it's in the off position. We want to make sure it's in the off position while we're working on our project. So another thing to point out about this is you see, I'm going to get closer to the camera here. You see on here, there's a little thin line running straight across there. That's actually a score mark. And this piece of plastic, we need to take that off. So we're gonna grab our pliers here And I'm just gonna grab that little piece of plastic and I'm gonna tilt it forward. Just like that. And you see how that piece comes off? It's meant to do that, just to break away. So that's what we have there. So that's now prepared. You'll also notice we've got, inside of this green part at the back, we've got 4 little screws. And currently they're all tightened up, and we want to loosen all of those. And what that's going to do is when we loosen those screws, it's going to open those little openings there. And both of our sets of wires are going to feed into those openings. So I'm going to take my little screwdriver and just go ahead and loosen up all of those until I can see the screw at the top. I don't want to take the screw all the way out. I just want to loosen it up in order to open up that little main piece there. So I'm going to do that for all of these. There we go. So now I've got all 4 of those screws loosened. Okay. And also you'll notice what came in the package with your motor speed controller. You've got another nut and a washer. We don't need the washer. We do need the nut. So hang on to the nut. So in our little box, we have 3 holes. Big hole on one side, and then the other side we've got 2 holes. You see them there. There's our 2 holes. So the small hole here, that's where our fan wires are going to feed through. So we're just going to press the fan wires through those holes like that so that they're coming out. Okay? We're going to do the same thing with the wires on our power connector. So we've got that bigger hole that's right next to where those 2 wires went in. Those are going to slip right in through there. And the power connector, you can see how that rests right there. So now the nut that came with our power connector, we're going to feed that over the end of the power connector wires. And we're going to go ahead and thread that nut onto the threaded portion of our power connector. They call this a barrel connector, in case you're interested. This kind of connector we're using here is a barrel connector. So once we've got that screwed in as much as we can get with our fingers, I'm just going to use my finger to hold a little bit of tension on the front of the barrel connector. And I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to just gently tighten up this nut. It doesn't need to be super tight, just a little bit tight to hold it in place. See how that's in there now? That's not going to move forward or backward. It's not wiggling around side to side. So in the process of doing that, I accidentally unseated my little fan wires here. So the fan wires are going to go back through the small hole like that. Okay. So we've got our power supply wires and we've got our fan wires, right? So on our motor controller, these wires are going to feed into this plate, and it's very important that we get these in the right configuration. So if we flip our motor speed controller over, we can see on the back we've got indications for power plus and minus and motor plus and minus. So we need to make sure that these feed in the right way. Now, plus is red, minus is black for both of our sets of wires. Plus is red, minus is black. You absolutely don't want to get that mixed up. You got to make sure that your red wire is feeding into the plus section and your black wire is feeding into the minus section. Absolutely make sure you get that right. Double check it, okay? So we also have the section marked power and the section marked motor. Now the power section is for the 2 short leads that are coming from our barrel connector. So let's start with those. I'm going to take my red wire and I'm going to feed that right into the section that says Power Plus. Okay? Power Plus. And if I gently press that in, it'll kind of get grabbed in place there. And now I can use my screwdriver to tighten up the corresponding screw. And I want to tighten this all the way down and get it nice and tight. Tight as I can get it with my fingers. And now we can see, whoops, oh, that didn't work. Let's try that again. Loosen this. Power Plus. Oh, I think I tightened the wrong one. That's my bad. Here we go. Now that's in there, nice and tight. I just tightened the wrong one. So now, that's Power Plus. Now I'm going to connect Power Minus. That's the black cable coming out of our barrel connector. Okay, so feed that right in there and tighten up the corresponding screw as tight as I can get it with my fingers. And there, now our motor controller is connected to power connector. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing but with our motor wires. These are the wires that are coming out of the base and from the fan. These are going to go to the remaining 2 openings in our motor controller. So again, we're going to make sure we get this right. We've got motor plus, that's for the red wire, and motor minus, that's for the black wire. So we'll start with motor plus, feed that into here, and use my screwdriver to tighten this down. There we go. Now we can see that that's securely affixed. And then the last one, motor minus, that's for the black wire coming from the fan. Feed that into there and tighten it down. Make sure I get that good and tight. Okay, so now we have all 4 wires connected, and we're just going to double check before we go any further that the red wire from the barrel connector is going to the Power Plus section, which it is. The black wire from the barrel connector is going to the Power Minus section, which it is. The red wire from the fan is going to the Motor Plus section, which it is. And the black wire from the fan is going to the Motor Minus section, which it is. So if yours does not correspond, if it doesn't look just like mine, then you'll have to disconnect and reconnect, make sure that we get it in the correct configuration. So the next thing we're going to do is actually seat our motor controller into our little project box here. And in order to do that, it's going to be pretty simple. We're just going to take the knob. We've got one remaining open hole here, and we're going to feed the knob section through the remaining hole. So we just push past these wires and get that knob section coming through that hole. And you can see, I'll bring this a little closer so you can see, this is kind of what we've got here, right? Look good? So the nut that came with our motor controller, while we press down on this whole apparatus, we're gonna go ahead and screw that nut into place. And you see how that's gonna screw onto the little bit of exposed threads that are on our motor controller here. And I'm gonna take my pliers and just tighten that up just a little bit to hold it in place. So there is my motor controller. It's now seated, and there's a little plastic knob that came with it. We can put that on now, or we can put it on later, doesn't matter. I'll go ahead and put mine on now. It just kind of pops on there. Just a little gentle press fit. There we go. So you can see how we've got that on-off click there. Once again, I'm just gonna double check, make sure that we turn this all the way counterclockwise, that it's as far as it'll go, and that we're past that little click so that that's in the off position. Okay, now I'm just gonna take my wires, they're sort of sticking up here. I'm gonna take and just sort of tuck them down a little bit, press them down out of the way, and take the lid to my project box and just press that on there. Keeps everything closed up nice and securely. So now for our fan, we're gonna mount this onto the side of our fan with our double stick tape. So I'm gonna take a couple pieces of my double stick tape here. Just gonna stick those to the bottom of my project box. Okay, and I'll peel off the other side here. There we go. Oop. Gotta peel it off here. This is always the tricky part. There it is. So now this part with the rim, with this opening, this is the front of the fan. So I want to stick my fan controller on here so that it's facing the front and that it's far enough forward that I can still get to that knob. If I put it way back here, that'll make the knob a little harder to turn. So I'm just going to stick it near the front. There we go. Press that on there. And now I still have access to that knob. I can get at that. Okay? So we're basically almost done. Let's just double check how everything looks here. We've got our two wires coming up from our fan from underneath the base, going into the project box, which we just looked at. We've got our base connected to our top segment. The top segment has the inner piece already installed. So at this point, really all we gotta do is plug it in and give it a try. So now, the power supply, that's in the little white box, okay? You've got the section here that plugs into the wall, and you've got this section here. This is gonna plug into our barrel connector, which is right back there. So we're gonna go ahead and plug that into the barrel connector, get that ready to go. And this I'm gonna plug into my outlet over here. So, if we did everything right, if all goes well, then when I turn this to the on position, then we'll start to get some airflow out of here. Now when I first turn it on, there we go, we can see it's at the lowest speed. And as I ramp it up, the speed increases, and we're getting quite a good amount of airflow out of here. But no blades. You can see there's nothing dangerous here. It's the aspect of the bladeless fan that makes it desirable. Turn this down a little bit so you can hear me talk. The aspect of the bladeless fan that makes it desirable is the lack of blades. Much safer this way. And you can see, I'll just grab a tissue here. If I feed the tissue in through the back, you can see how it's, immediately being sucked in through the back and forced out through the front. So pretty good amount of airflow, even at low setting. If I crank that up, you can see quite a lot more airflow. So the idea behind the fan, click that into the off position for now, is that air is pulled in through the base, and that creates this pressure inside of the top chamber here. And that air pressure escapes through this little slit that runs around here, and it heads off in this direction. And as it's moving off in this direction, it's pulling in air from back here, and the air that's moving in through this chamber is accelerating, and it is amplifying the airflow as it exits the fan. So you're getting sort of more airflow, this is the Coanda effect, more airflow than you otherwise would because of that surrounding air that's being accelerated as it's pulled in through the duct. So there is our bladeless fan. You can see that. That will be very nice on your desktop. Put it on the floor. Keep yourself cool this summer. So I hope you had fun putting this together. If you run into any issues, if you need assistance, or if there's tools you don't have, give us a call, send us an email. We will help you out. So yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you have fun, and we'll see you next time.